All right. So today I want to share some stories with y'all about some of my encounters, visitations. I typically don't tell my own stories just because it's a natural part of my life. So I struggle to differentiate what others might consider a special occasion because they're not rare or uncommon for me. I've been having regular daily visitations and encounters for several years now. So at this point, it's just a way of life for me. Um, so what I want to do is tell y'all the story of the first time I met Holy Spirit. Also, I want to tell y'all about an encounter, or more so a meeting I had with her probably last year. And we'll get to that. So, some years ago, it's probably 2017, 2018. I remember I saw it was a short vision that I had, and it looked like Human Torch from Marvel, the Fantastic Four, but it was more of a feminine form, kind of like a person in a robe, is how I took it at the time. Because at this point, I'm Baptist. I grew up Baptist, so I know choir robes, and I had begun to study Catholicism, so I was familiar with like the priestly robes or the bishop garments that they would wear. So that's more so where my head was going. I was like, okay, that's interesting. Didn't think much of it. Well, some time after that, um, I was in my room and I entered into an overlap, or rather, I'd say I got pulled into an overlap. And the reason I call it an overlap rather than a vision or something like that is because I stayed in my room and Holy Spirit stayed where she was, but we were able to view each other almost on an equal plane. So it was almost like Holy Spirit pulled me to where she was. And when I saw her, I remember her hair was made of fire, her eyes were fire, and she had tufts of fire over her shoulders and arms. She had on these golden robes, and she had bronzish skin, right? Almost metallic. They had a little glistening effect to them, almost as if she had glitter in her skin. And I remember just looking at her and going, "You're Holy Spirit. You're a woman." And instantly I started to think about a lot of the things that I'd been told, a lot of the theology I'd been given, a lot of the verses, because at this time I'd read the Bible like maybe twice already, cover to cover. So I just started to think back to certain verses or certain themes, and I was like, He's going to send His comforter. That's you. That's a feminine function. We're born of the Spirit. Men don't give birth. That's you. You're our mom. You're His mom. His mom. He was Christ before. He was the Son of God before Mary. You're His real mom. Brooding over the waters in Genesis. You're our real mom. You're the mother of creation. That's wow. So it was a short interaction. I don't actually think she told me anything in that engagement. Now, I'll tell you, at this time, I wasn't as bold as I am now, so I kept that a secret for the next maybe 3, 4 years before I started to tell people about it, or at least start teaching about it in public. It took me a while. Because something I'd run into is people who would do just enough research to be dismissive. They'd say, oh, well, there's some verses, God's a spirit, so they're neither male nor female. But that never comes up when we call Holy Spirit He, or when we call the Father He, or we call Yeshua He. It never shows up when it's a He, but when I say she, now it's, oh, they're neither. Okay, yeah, biases. Just enough spirituality to maintain their isms. Because, mind you, the structure of family comes from the original family, the royal family. So that's one of the things that was like my first time really meeting Holy Spirit. So next I'll tell you about a time, this was last year, and I had realized at this point that it's been a while since I met with Holy Spirit specifically. I was like, it's been a while since I've actually sat and met with Mother. So I went into the inner court, and she was sitting down in front of, oh, that was one of the other things. When I said that her hair was fire and her eyes were fire and she had these tufts of fire on her body, if you were to count them, it would add up to 7. So in a way, she looked like a living menorah. So I started calling her the Menoran priest after that. So this day I go into the inner court, and she's sitting down in a beautiful throne type chair in front of a giant menorah. And she tells me to sit down, and a chair appears behind me as I'm sitting down. And I go to start my usual back and forth dialogue with her, and my thoughts keep getting shut down. And it's at that point I realize there's something she wants to show me. There's something she wants to share with me. This isn't a meeting for dialogue per se. So I just relax, and I just open myself up, and I'm like, okay, what does she want to show me? So I'm sitting there just to receive whatever Holy Spirit wants to share with me. So she starts teaching about love. And she drew a standard that from that point forward I live from. In describing love and what makes something true love from her perspective. This is Holy Spirit's standard of love. She says, love is an all-consuming, all-accepting, all-transforming, purifying fire. It has to be all of those things to be love. And I'm summarizing a lot. And the whole time she's talking about this, she's showing me somewhat a visual of like a forest fire. So I'm watching fire sweep over, and it's transforming. It's like, well, the property of fire, though we understand it as destruction, it's really a purification process. This is also why the lake of fire is more of a promise of redemption rather than a promise for eternal torture and torment. Separate video on that already on the channel. And she's just saying, isn't that the true posture of the heart? A true standpoint of love to want to see things in their purest and most undefiled state. And she kept emphasizing that love has to be all accepting, all consuming, all transforming, and the side effect should be purity of all things, which begin to reveal counterfeit forms of love, where if it's all accepting but nothing's being transformed, you have yourself a counterfeit. If you have something that purifies some and not others, you have yourself a counterfeit. If you have something that where all are being consumed and all are being accepted, but none are being transformed, and the byproduct is impurity, something's off. That's a false fire. That's not the standard that Holy Spirit presents. Now, this isn't the Nelson standard. This is Holy Spirit's standard. And I just remember that the whole time she's showing me the fires, and she's sharing with me about the concepts and the principles associated with love. The whole time she has these waves of energy coming from her heart, and they're washing over me. So I'm getting repeatedly baptized over and over and over again the whole time, while she's pretty much giving me this lecture on love. And I even understand that more now than I did a year ago. So those are some of the encounters that I've had with Holy Spirit. Of course, I see her quite often. I know for a fact Holy Spirit's a woman. That is our mother, above all things. I've done a video on it. It's probably time for me to do newer videos on it. It's been a while. But yeah, Holy Spirit is our mother, and easy to access. You can have the same relationship. I don't tell these stories for y'all to see me as someone or put me on a pedestal that you can't obtain, more so to make it more accessible to you. That everything that I walk in and tell y'all stories about is something that can be accomplished by really anyone. And relationship with God isn't hard. Any of them, any of the royal family. This is part of why I call them the royal family. I recognize that we have a mother and a father and other siblings. So let me know if there are other stories y'all would like for me to tell. But links in the description down below. That's it for this session. Until next time, y'all be blessed.